just in case this is also useful, I'm going to create a tutorial in real time here. We can talk about this on Monday, but also so that you have it anytime you want it. That's the benefit of a video. Um, you can go back and watch it and you can go through it on your own time. So here I have this customer stakeholder interview protocol. Um, Maybe I should change the title here. Just customer interviews, stakeholder interviews. Um, Talk to people who have or are impacted by the problem you want to solve. So this is where I got, I was trying to be overly generic here because it's not always a customer, but basically this is what we talked about on Monday's call. Most of you had two or three different segments of the market, and in this divergent phase, I'm not going to force this idea of go talk to the customer. This is where we talked about, at the end of the call with Jade, Marcus jumped into, is it the user or the payer? And it could be either. I gave the example with Facebook. It doesn't have to be the payer. It's already known sort of that if you get the 6 billion eyeballs, you don't need to go out and do interviews on the payer. You would want to sort of validate that people are going to use the site all day long or have the problem for connection. So kindly fill in this form each time you have a conversation. I'm just trying to say let's this isn't a generic, end of sprint, one interview, one form. Keep filling it out because then we'll get a report on who you're talking to and patterns will emerge. What problem are you solving? This is something that you sort of is a placeholder. You would enter this before you talk to the person. What problem you think you're solving for this person, the one problem you're solving. For whom are you solving the problem? This would match the stakeholders. So this could be students, funders, just kind of generically tell me which stakeholders. So when we go back, we can see the patterns of the different types of stakeholders, the customer, the user, and then describe. So in one of your projects, this would be where you put not just the 12 to 24-year-olds, but high school students, in this school, is how I would answer that question. First name, if you can, or just identify it, it's not as important, but if you want to go back and look at patterns or re-interview them, describe the person in the context of the problem. So this is maybe a duplicate question in terms of for whom you solving this problem. For whom you solving this problem is sort of the generic stakeholder persona, and describe this person in the context of your problem is like, I interviewed this high school student at this time. This is why I kind of picked this person to interview. How did you talk to this person? Pretty straightforward. I promise I will explain the MMRPG, otherwise ignore it. How did you reach this person? So how did you connect to, so what was the sort of the channel, not the format of the interview itself? And then the rest of this is sort of the result of the interview. So this is where this is the stuff I'm looking for. And I really believe will be helpful for you. So what was the most interesting thing you learned? What was the most important thing you learned? And my favorite is the most surprising thing you learned. So, if you're just proving yourself right all the time, that's where we got into confirmation bias, hearing what you want to hear, not you all personally, individually, but entrepreneurs. Check all that apply. We got into this on Monday's call, but I didn't go too deep because I didn't want to overdo it in terms of early adopters and diffusion of innovation curves, but there is going to be something, patterns emerge that they have the problem, know they have the problem, and are actively trying to solve it. This will be useful in retrospect for you to see. For now, just think of it in individual micro terms, and then we'll put the pieces back together later to be like, oh, most of the people I talk to, they have the problem, but they don't know it, or they know they have the problem, but they're okay with it. It's going to be a little trickier in the context of some of the social problems we're solving here, but just bear with me, and we'll see if we need to change this question. What needs to happen in order to get this person to give you money? This is sort of, I'm going to make this question optional. this is sort of a behavior change or currency in exchange for your solution. So do they need to, change their behavior or use an app in school? Um, there's usually some sort of change or behavior change. We'll get into this more in phase two. There's a four forces document from Ash Moria that I can share as well. Um, what do you need? Ignore this. I'm going to make this optional as well. This will come in phase two. It's a lot of entrepreneurs. They tend to think they need $10 million. Um, to build X. So I'm just sort of creating a groundwork for phase two here. Just because I make it optional doesn't mean it's not relevant. I still do think it's relevant, but I'm going to make this question optional. I did not mention my solution. So this is sort of where I've been using the form for how to practice the interviews and not just the type of information you're trying to get. So we're trying to teach, not to mention the solution. I just got off another call. A guy in Calgary is working on it. He's like, just try not to mention your solution. Try to learn, this is where empathy comes in. You're all familiar with design thinking. So try to understand the human and the context and not pitch a solution yet. I didn't know this person a month ago. I'm not trying to, this is a little aggressive. Sometimes people will go and they interview friends, or corporates will interview people that are just, coming back and back and back to tell them things they want to hear. So this is just an attempt to make this a brand new interview. And then, these last two questions I added just for you recently. So I've updated the form here because I do know how hard this is. So all the stuff with Jade, all the stuff just in general, interviews are